5,000 years ago, there was no Jerusalem. Just hills, a spring, and the silence of an unclaimed land waiting for its destiny. But water drew people, as it always does. The Gihon Spring, Jerusalem's first heartbeat, began pumping life into history. The first settlers were Canaanites. They built mud brick homes on the ridge above, where they could watch for enemies. They called their village something that sounded like Jerusalem, a name that would echo through 4,000 years of bloodshed. By the Middle Bronze Age, the Jebusites had built massive walls. Their fortress seemed impregnable, carved into living rock. For centuries, empires rose and fell around Jerusalem. Egypt, Hittites, Sea Peoples, but the Jebusites held their rocky perch. The Amarna letters reveal Jerusalem's king pleading for Egyptian help. "Send archers," he begged, "or the city is lost." The Bronze Age collapsed. Empires crumbled. In the chaos, new peoples emerged from the hills. Among them, the Israelites. The Jebusites mocked the Israelite tribes gathering in the hills. Even the blind could defend these walls, they boasted. But one man saw what others missed: a water shaft, a weakness, a path inside. His name was David. Under cover of darkness, his men climbed the water shaft. By morning, the impregnable city belonged to Israel. David declared it his capital, the city of David. 3,000 years of sacred history were about to begin. David made Jerusalem the political capital. But to unite the tribes, he needed more, a spiritual center. He brought the Ark of the Covenant. David wanted to build God a house, but that task would fall to his son, Solomon, the builder king. Solomon commanded resources from across the known world. Lebanese cedars floated down the coast. Gold arrived from Ophir. For 7 years, Jerusalem echoed with hammers. On Mount Moriah, the first temple rose, Israel's connection to heaven itself. The temple gleamed with gold. Inside the Holy of Holies, the ark rested beneath golden cherubim spreading their wings. But empires are fragile. After Solomon's death, the kingdom split. Jerusalem kept Judah. The north broke away. Centuries of prophets, kings, and sieges followed. Then, in 701 BCE, the Assyrian army appeared, 185,000 soldiers surrounding Jerusalem. King Hezekiah had prepared. He'd carved a secret tunnel, 533 meters through solid rock, to protect the water supply. The Bible says an angel slew the Assyrians overnight. Whatever happened, they withdrew. Jerusalem survived, this time. But no miracle would save them from Babylon. In 586 BCE, Nebuchadnezzar's armies breached the walls. Solomon's temple, 400 years of prayers and sacrifices, burned to the ground. The Ark of the Covenant vanished forever. The survivors were marched to Babylon in chains. By the rivers of Babylon we wept when we remembered Zion. Jerusalem lay in ruins. But in exile, a people learned to remember and to hope. For 50 years, the exiles dreamed of return. Then Persia conquered Babylon, and King Cyrus issued an astonishing decree. The Jews could go home. They returned to find Jerusalem in ruins. Weeds where the temple stood. Walls broken. Homes collapsed into rubble. Against all obstacles, they rebuilt the temple. In 516 BCE, the second temple rose on the sacred mount. Old men wept. This temple seemed so poor compared to Solomon's glory. But the young celebrated. They had a home. Decades later, Nehemiah rebuilt the walls in just 52 days, a feat that stunned the surrounding nations. For 2 centuries under Persian rule, Jerusalem remained small but sacred, a modest sanctuary keeping ancient promises alive. Then, from the west, came a conqueror who would change everything. Alexander the Great marched into history. The Greek era had begun. Jerusalem would never be purely Eastern again. For 2 centuries, Jerusalem balanced between cultures: Jewish faith, Greek philosophy. Some Jews embraced Hellenism. Others saw it as spiritual death. Then in 167 BCE, the Seleucid king Antiochus demanded the unthinkable: a statue of Zeus in the temple. The Maccabean revolt began, a family of rural priests leading guerrilla war against the greatest empire in the world. Against all odds, Judas Maccabeus won victory after victory. In 164 BCE, the rebels retook Jerusalem. They found the temple defiled, but intact. The sacred menorah needed oil, but only enough for 1 day remained. According to tradition, the oil burned for 8 days, a miracle. They called it Hanukkah, the festival of dedication. For a century, the Hasmonean dynasty ruled an independent Jewish kingdom. Jerusalem expanded. The temple gleamed with new glory. But civil war and Roman intervention ended the dream. The legions were coming. Rome appointed a half-Jewish king named Herod. He was paranoid, murderous, and one of history's greatest builders. He would remake Jerusalem entirely. Herod doubled the Temple Mount platform, engineering massive retaining walls from stones weighing up to 600 tons. The temple itself was transformed, covered in gold plates so bright that pilgrims couldn't look directly at it. Into this golden city, around the year 30, came a Galilean preacher named Jesus. He wept over Jerusalem's future. He overturned money changers, tables in the temple courts. He was arrested, tried by Pontius Pilate, and crucified. His followers claimed resurrection. A small Jewish sect became Christianity, a faith that would reshape the entire world. But Jewish resentment of Rome festered. In 66 CE, open revolt erupted. Rome sent its legions. In 70 CE, General Titus surrounded Jerusalem with 4 legions. Famine gripped the city. Defenders turned against each other. The temple burned on the 9th of Av, the same calendar date as the first temple's destruction, 656 years earlier. Titus ordered the entire city demolished. But one retaining wall survived, what we now call the Western Wall. In Rome, the Arch of Titus displayed the spoils. The golden menorah, the sacred trumpets, paraded through streets. 60 years later, Emperor Hadrian planned to rebuild Jerusalem as a Roman city with a temple to Jupiter. The Jews rose again under Bar Kokhba. This time, Rome's response was genocide. Jews were banned from Jerusalem. Hadrian built Aelia Capitolina over the ruins. A pagan temple rose where Abraham nearly sacrificed Isaac. Jerusalem became a minor pagan city. But the story was far from over. In 312 CE, Emperor Constantine saw a vision, a cross in the sky. By this sign, conquered, it said, Christianity became Rome's faith. Constantine's mother, Helena, traveled to Jerusalem in 326. She came to find where Jesus died and was buried. Beneath Hadrian's pagan temple, workers found a rock-cut tomb. Helena declared it Christ's burial place. Constantine ordered a church built over the tomb. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre rose, Christianity's holiest site. Pilgrims streamed from across the Christian world. Jerusalem transformed from provincial backwater to holy city once more. Jews were still banned from living in Jerusalem. Once a year, on the temple's destruction anniversary, they could visit. Churches multiplied across Jerusalem. On the Mount of Olives, at Gethsemane, along the Via Dolorosa, the city became a museum. In 614, disaster struck. Persian armies sacked Jerusalem, burned churches, and massacred thousands. The true cross was stolen. Emperor Heraclius recovered the cross and restored Byzantine rule. But the empire was exhausted. New conquerors were coming. In 638, Caliph Umar rode into Jerusalem on a white camel. He asked to see where Solomon's temple stood. Finding it covered in garbage, Umar cleared the site with his own hands. A new chapter in Jerusalem's story began. Muslims called Jerusalem Al-Quds, the Holy One. They believed Muhammad had ascended to heaven from this very rock on the Temple Mount. In 691, Caliph Abd al-Malik began construction of the Dome of the Rock, Islam's first great architectural masterpiece. Byzantine craftsmen created glittering mosaics. The dome itself was covered in gold, a statement visible for miles. The Dome of the Rock still stands, the oldest Islamic building in the world, unchanged in its essential form. Soon after, the Al-Aqsa Mosque rose nearby, a congregational mosque for the faithful to gather and pray. For 4 centuries, Jerusalem flourished under Islamic rule. Jews were allowed to return. Christians kept their churches. Jewish scholarship revived. In the shadow of Islamic monuments, rabbis wrote commentaries that would shape Judaism for centuries. But in 1009, the Fatimid Caliph al-Hakim ordered churches destroyed. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre was demolished. The church was eventually rebuilt, but the damage to Christian-Muslim relations had been done. Europe began to stir. Pope Urban II called for holy war. God wills it. Thousands of European knights took up the cross. 4 years later, the Crusader army stood before Jerusalem's walls. What followed would haunt history for a millennium. On July 15, 1099, the Crusaders breached the walls. They massacred nearly every Muslim and Jew in the city. The Kingdom of Jerusalem was born in blood. The Crusaders rebuilt Jerusalem in their image. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre was reconstructed. Its Romanesque form survives to this day. They turned the Dome of the Rock into a church, Templum Domini. Knights Templar made Al-Aqsa their headquarters. For 88 years, Jerusalem was a Crusader capital, a European island in a sea of Islam. But a Kurdish general named Saladin was uniting the Muslim world. In 1187, his army annihilated the Crusaders. 3 months later, Saladin entered Jerusalem. Unlike the Crusaders, he forbade massacre. He showed mercy. The cross came down from the Dome of the Rock. Islamic worship resumed on the Temple Mount. The Third Crusade brought Richard the Lionheart to reclaim Jerusalem. He came close, but never retook the city. For 700 years, Jerusalem would remain in Islamic hands, Ayyubid, then Mamluk, then Ottoman. Crusader dreams were finished. The Mamluks beautified Jerusalem with madrasas and fountains. Scholars came from across the Islamic world to study. But the city was never a capital. Jerusalem became a provincial backwater, holy but neglected, remembered but not rebuilt. Then in 1517, the Ottoman Turks conquered the region. A new empire would transform the city once more. Suleiman the Magnificent rebuilt Jerusalem's walls, the same golden limestone fortifications that surround the old city today. They took 4 years to complete. The 7 gates still bear Ottoman inscriptions. For 400 years, they defined Jerusalem's boundaries, and still do. Jerusalem became a quiet provincial town. Pilgrims came and went. Empires rose and fell. The walls endured. In the 19th century, European powers began competing for influence. Churches, hospices, and consulates multiplied outside the walls. Jewish immigration increased. Neighborhoods like Mia Shiram arose, the first Jewish areas outside the walls since Roman times. Zionism emerged, a movement to create a Jewish homeland. If you will it, it is no dream, Theodor Herzl declared. World War I brought the Ottoman Empire to its knees. In 1917, British General Allenby approached Jerusalem's ancient walls. On December 11, 1917, Allenby walked through Jaffa Gate on foot. Out of respect, he refused to ride. Today the wars of the Crusades are completed, British newspapers declared. But the modern wars were just beginning. Britain promised a Jewish homeland, and also promised Arab independence. They couldn't keep both promises. Violence erupted. After World War II and the Holocaust, pressure mounted. In 1947, the UN voted to partition Palestine. On May 14, 1948, Israel declared independence. The next day, 5 Arab armies invaded. Jerusalem became a battlefield, divided by war. The Jewish quarter of the old city fell. Ancient synagogues were dynamited. The Western Wall became unreachable. An armistice line cut through the city. Barbed wire, minefields, and sniper positions divided Jerusalem for 19 years. Israelis could see the old city from rooftops, but couldn't enter. The wall, the Temple Mount, forbidden, unreachable. On June 5, 1967, war erupted again. Jordan shelled West Jerusalem. Israel decided to strike back. Israeli paratroopers fought through the narrow streets. On June 7th, they reached the Western Wall. Battle-hardened soldiers wept. The Temple Mount is in our hands, the commander radioed. 2,000 years of exile ended. Israel declared Jerusalem reunited, its eternal, undivided capital. The world largely refused to recognize this claim. For Palestinians, 1967 was the Naksa, the setback, another displacement, another occupation, another chapter in a tragedy unresolved. Today, Jerusalem remains the world's most contested city. 3 faiths, 2 peoples, 1 city, and no resolution in sight. Every Friday, Muslims gather at Al-Aqsa, sometimes 100,000 strong. The call to prayer echoes over ancient stones. Every Shabbat, Jews gather at the Western Wall. Bar mitzvahs, weddings, prayers, the ancient stones absorbing endless devotion. Every Easter, Christians walk the Via Dolorosa, retracing Christ's final steps. Pilgrims from every continent, every tongue. The old city covers less than 1 square kilometer, yet it contains more meaning per meter than anywhere on earth. 5,000 years of history lie beneath these streets.
Yes, and right
Every excavation unearths another layer, another story, another conflict. Jerusalem has been destroyed twice, besieged 23 times, captured 44 times, and yet it endures, always. Empires that conquered Jerusalem are dust. Babylon, Rome, the Crusaders, the Ottomans, gone. Jerusalem remains. Jerusalem, holy to 3 faiths, claimed by 2 peoples. conquered by dozens of empires. 5,000 years of tears, prayers, blood, and hope, still flowing through these ancient streets.